"Why did you do it?" someone yelled at me. "They all got what they deserve. I have no regrets," I replied. Everyone is always surprised when it happens in their town. They never expect it. They interviewed everyone, the mayor, school teachers, and even the gas station attendant that helped me just days prior to the incident. "Oh, I went to school with him. Oh, we used to sit next to each other on the bus and talk. Oh, he's always cracking jokes," she said to a reporter. Such uproar because of me, the town wouldn't soon forget. Heck, I would want them to. I changed the lives of 4 families that night forever. People often told me I looked like the guy that would come into a building and shoot everyone in sight. Why couldn't these same people instead tell me that my shoes sure looked nice, or that it was good to see me that day? It wouldn't matter to me if they meant those words or not, because I could assume the best scenario. If someone says you look like an axe murderer, it's not likely they're saying it just to be kind, Something had to be done. Timing would be the key. And everything came together brilliantly for me that night. People always say, "Let's see what tomorrow brings." I decided the night prior that I was going to be what tomorrow brings. And I was. It was the week of my 20th high school reunion. I had no interest going to the 10th, but for some reason this time I really wanted to see everyone again. Got in my car and started to drive. I only had a little over an hour to get back home. I used the time to reflect on the memories that had been replaying in my head over and over again in my adult years. I don't know if you've ever driven down a road through a place you haven't been in a while. It's a strange feeling, and your memory plays tricks on you. It's almost like a dream. You pass these places you remember so well that you swear you could reconstruct them brick by brick. When you see them, though, they're slightly different. They're old and worn, almost the same, but not quite. I passed a ball field near the school as I drove. It was overgrown now, and all the clean-cut grass in the outfield had given way to thick weeds and underbrush after years of abandonment and disuse. Not for me, though. I remembered it the way it was. I could see myself and the other kids lining up on a nice day, waiting to get picked for teams. We would all race to the home plate of the ball field. The first 2 kids there were captains, and they took turns choosing players for their team. Being the last one picked was always pretty discomforting. See, the kid didn't really choose you. He had no choice, always an awkward moment for both the player and the captain. And no, I wasn't chosen last in this case, if you were wondering. I was second to last. The game we were playing was football. Our leader, Rocky, was really into the sport. He went on to play in college and made a pretty good name for himself, I guess, and now he's a local celebrity back home. He sells cars and is always on TV wearing his old jersey. At any rate, I was on his team the last day of school in 4th grade. There were no quarters when we played. We just kept going back and forth until the school bell rang for us to go back into class. It was tied 14-14 when the bell rang. We were in a huddle at the time, and we knew this was the last play of the game, not just for today, but also until the next school year. Without making eye contact, he said to me, "Everyone go long, but get this. We'll throw it to Freddie." I knew what he meant and what he thought, but I didn't care. I was the target for that throw, and there was no way in hell I was going to look bad. Turns out, he did in fact throw it to me, and I caught it for the touchdown, winning the game. I thought for sure this would get me picked second or third the next time we played, and that motivated me to train all summer by playing football with a group of younger kids in the church parking lot. When we weren't playing, I'd jog around town hoping to gain speed so that I could get there first one day, be a captain, and pick a winning team when school started again. I trained all summer waiting for that big day, the day school started again, and the football teams were chosen. I waited in the lineup, sure that I was going to get picked early on. After all, I proved myself that last day of school on our recess gridiron. I waited as the captains looked over every kid. I watched them pick the strong guy, the fast guy, the good guy. I realized that everybody seemed to have forgotten my Heisman-worthy play that closed out that game last year. My heart fell as I watched them pick all the good kids, then all the okay kids, and then finally the awful kids. I watched them pick the fat guy, the slow guy, the guy with asthma. I watched my heart sinking as the captain came to me. With a look of distaste, he pointed to me, and we all began to run to our makeshift field. I was dead last. After a while, I passed through the edge where the rotting field was, and I got into the town city limits. Same thing, but it's different. Shops closed down, or where they're not supposed to be. Some franchising happened while I was gone. There was a Starbucks now, where that old cafe used to be when I was a kid. It was different now, all painted on with that green and white, where I remembered the soft brown and muted tones that used to dot the storefront while I waited for the bus. It was new for me, that whole school bus experience. In middle school, we switched to a different bus that stopped there, so every morning the middle school kids would stop and wait at the cafe for the new bus to come. Some people would buy soda or rolls to pass the time before our ride. There was an aspiring bully named Robbie that was in the group of travelers. On my first day of 6th grade, he told me horror stories of things he'd do to me once we got to the school. This was Finally, the bus pulled up, and everyone started to board. I'd never been on a school bus before, other than taking them to field trips in grade school. Teachers would always accompany us on those trips, though, stopping the anarchy that only middle school boys can start. As I stepped up into the bus, I started looking for somewhere to sit. I should have just sat in those empty 2 front rows with the overweight kid with glasses. It seemed, though, that the cool seats were toward the back where the bus driver couldn't keep a good eye on our activities. I made it all the way to the back of the bus to find not even a single open seat. I turned around and doubled back to the second row on the same side of the driver. About halfway through my first ride on my very first day at the new school, Robbie did something he did not warn me about. It seemed he took a few sugar packets from the cafe that morning, and he proceeded to rip them open and throw them at my head. The genius thinking behind this was the physics. When the packets hit my head, the sudden motion stop caused the contents of the packet to spill in my hair. I tried to get it out, but the more I ran my fingers through my hair, the more it spread. I enjoyed my first day in middle school, looking like I had really bad dandruff. I suppose I could have had quite a different experience in that school if circumstances were different that first day. Things might have been much, much different if I'd found a cool seat and didn't have to fluff sugar out of my hair. That wasn't the end of those bus adventures, though, not by a long shot. Sometime in the middle of my sophomore year, I decided it was time to take some chances and try my hand at starting up conversations with the ladies. On the way home from school one day, I pulled my thoughts together and moved to that vacant 6th seat on the left-hand side where my classmate Stacy was sitting. I had scoped out the seat, making sure it was empty. I got over there, ready to put my moves on her, all confident with my 10th grade bravado. I made eye contact with her and was trying to think of some cool line, something I could say first. She beat me to it. "The pimples on your face remind me of my cat's nipples," she said. I was floored. Never in my wildest nightmare would a girl open with a line quite as bold as that. I had no idea how to reply or even how to spin it in my favor. She had insulted me and brought up nipples all in the same sentence. I sat there stunned and desperate. I attempted to salvage the conversation any way I could. How many cats do you have?" I asked, stammering the words out in an attempt to have some normal conversation. I remember getting off the bus that day sad that my attempt at being kind and smooth to a girl was met with a cool, calculating destruction of my self-esteem. I almost did a double take when I passed the gas station just past the center of town. Of all the things that didn't match my memory, the gas station changed the most, and where there had once been a small gas station was now barely a building at all. The pumps had been torn out of the ground, leaving gaping cracks in the pavement that the grass had reclaimed for its own. The attached mini-mart had all but fallen in on itself. The broken windows allowed me a brief peek inside to see a crumbling interior and a loft ready to collapse. It surprised me that the gas station was done and gone. It had been a thriving center when I was a kid. The thing to do on the weekends in this small town was to hang out at one of two places on the weekends, either the gas station or outside the pizza place. Most of the time we did what teenagers do. We cruise and walk between those two spots, always on the hunt for alcohol and some girls. Often we hoped those two would come hand in hand. I can remember one particular night. I was walking from the pizza place to the gas station with a couple of friends. The night had been pretty slow, and we decided instead of our normal booze and babe hunting, we'd go over to the gas station and play some arcade games. The gas station had a little loft up top away from the main store where they had a few of the newest games. You could usually find a few guys hanging out there on the weekend. The lure of the buttons was enough to overcome their hunt as well. As we walked up to the gas station door, I noticed what appeared to be a water gun fight. Right when I walked up to the door, I felt a stream hit me, and I thought I'd gotten caught in some crossfire. That's when I realized that it wasn't so much a water gun fight as it was my classmate Lonnie shooting directly at my mouth. It also didn't take long for me to realize the gun wasn't filled with water. I'd never tasted urine before, but it's pretty much how you would expect it to taste, I guess. It's warmer than you'd think. But that doesn't change the fact that now you're that sorry kid who's tasted some other person's urine. There was much more I should have done. Instead, I took it, letting them run away screaming laughter as I fumbled frantically, gulping and spitting at the water fountain while I fumbled in my pockets for some change to buy a pack of gum. I still played Pac-Man that night after the incident. I played until the mini-mart closed, my thumbs gnashing out the anger and shame. The gum was a fresh, painful reminder of the reason I was chewing it. Anger and shame, it seemed, were close friends of mine by that point. They had joined up with me sometime when I was younger, and by 11th grade, they knew me pretty well.
Even they hung around laughing and mocking me as I tried to concentrate doggedly on chasing those little ghosts endlessly around the screen.
It was a quick ride from the field to the hotel. All those memories made it seem longer, though. Memory's a funny thing. Time makes no difference there. You could live a lifetime in a second, or a second in an hour. In my particular case, I lived out my childhood in the 5 minutes it took me to get from that weathered old welcome sign to the hotel where I made my reservations. The hotel hadn't changed too much, besides free Wi-Fi signs plastered everywhere. The little living room still had the same furniture I remembered, slightly lighter from years of use, and some of the chairs had been reupholstered, their vibrant new fabric contrasting sharply with their more faded brethren. I walked over to the counter where the receptionist sat, clacking away at the computer and chatting on her phone. She looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place her. She had to have been someone's daughter since she was too young to have been in school with me. Much to her irritation, I interrupted her to check in. "Room 12, upstairs to your left. The signing is in the conference room to your right," she said, curtly nodding her head in the conference room's direction. Signing for what, I asked, but she was already nattering away on the phone again. Slightly annoyed, but more curious, I walked the 20 steps or so to the room to see what was going on.
Turns out it was Rocky, that football captain I'd reminisced about on my drive over. I guess he was doing some sort of promotion for a local company, since they had these football-shaped pens that they were handing out, you know, that kind that nobody ever really writes with. He was using the pens to sign business cards with the company's name on it and handing it out to whoever asked. I got in line, figured I might as well say hi to the guy after all these years. I went about 3 or 4 spaces when he suddenly looked up from the signing. He grinned at me, and I grinned back, waving slightly. He grabbed one of the football pens from the rack and looked back over at me, nodding once. I understood. He got up and threw the football pen at me. It arced across the room in a beautiful spiral, landing neatly in my hands as I stretched them out to receive it. His grin got even wider, and he flashed me a quick thumbs up. Some people in the room started clapping. Others laughed. One old guy yelled, "Touchdown!" They settled down and got back into line, but I didn't. He said everything he needed there, and I did too. I walked out of the conference room and up the stairs to my room. I half smiled on the walk back up to my room, sticking the football pen in my pocket. In some ways, it was the most real connection with anybody I ever had there, and we never even said a word. After taking a shower, I headed over to the bar that I worked at in my college years. I sat down, and lo and behold, Lonnie was staring at me on the other side. "What can I get for you?" he asked. "Well, Lon," I smiled, "so long as you keep your pants zipped up, then how about a Scotch neat?" I expected him to think a bit and laugh or apologize or do something. I expected him to acknowledge that urine-filled water gun from so long ago. He didn't, though. He simply shrugged oddly, pouring the Scotch into a highball for me and sliding it my way. "So, you just passing through," he said, "out-of-towner?" "No, Lonnie," I said, "it's me, Freddie." "Oh, shit, Fred," he said, laughing. "How you been? I ain't seen you in years, not since we used to hang around at the gas station. What's up with you?" We started to chat about the times, where we used to sit, and what we were doing, but he never, not once, touched on the important stuff, the stuff I remembered. I left the bar feeling something, I don't know, something hadn't bridged a gap. I felt like we were two ships or planes that kind of passed each other dimly in the night, vaguely and mechanically hailing each other to avoid a cataclysmic crash. The next morning, I headed over to the diner that was connected to the hotel for a cup of coffee. I sat down at a stool, trying to flag the attention of the waiter. It was Robbie. "Hey, Robbie," I said, "can I get a coffee?" "Hey, Fred, how you been?" he said, coming up over to me. "Of course you can." He went back over to the coffee machine, pouring out a mug for me. He plopped it down in front of me. "Want any sugar with that?" he asked me, shuffling a few sugar packets in his fingers. "Sure do," I said. I grinned. "But hand them over sealed and slow, and keep your hands where I can see them." He laughed, but not for real, that kind of laugh that people do to be polite, that short fake laugh, a pity laugh, you know. He slid the sugar packets down the counter nice and easy like I had asked him to, and we talked for a while over coffee. I left the diner the same way I left the bar. Hell, if it didn't even feel any different, from one machine to the next, just spouting out all the things you're supposed to say in the script. On my way to the hotel, I stopped in the convenience store to get a paper, a couple of lottery tickets, and another coffee. An old schoolmate was there working there, but she didn't seem to remember me. "How many cats do you have?" I asked her. "How did you know I have cats?" Stacy asked. "Your shirt says I heart cats, so I just assumed," I chuckled. "Oh yeah, I love my cats. I'm so glad you asked about them," she said, all excited. I smiled politely and turned to fill out my lottery ticket. "Got a pen?" I asked her. "Nope," she said. "Only one I got ran out just a second ago." "Never mind, I might have one," I said, rifling through my pockets. I found that football pen in my front one, and I laughed silently to myself. It was the first time I was ever going to write with a football pen. It was fat and awkward with a big number 12 emblazoned on the middle of it. "I got one, thanks," I said. That big 12 stared up at me as I put the pen to the paper, and I marked 12 as my first number. "And you know, Snowball recently had a litter. They're adorable and furry." I hadn't even realized the woman was still talking. I said something noncommittal, still focused on the paper. I usually do just a quick pick. For some reason, though, I figured I'd put a little more thought into it. That 12 seemed significant, and I figured I'd keep going with some meaningful numbers. "Got a wonderful offer for the littlest white one of them from..."
I was there for my 20th reunion. I marked down 20 for the next spot. Might as well stick with the theme, 12 being a number from my past and all. Terrible dandruff. I had to buy a special shampoo for her. She was dotting the floor with fur. My mind flashed back fast to all that sugar falling out of my hair. It was almost automatic when I heard the word dandruff now. I jotted down 6 for that year. Almost went out with him. I can't imagine ever being with a man who did that to cats. I irritably tried to ignore her, only putting out terse replies every other sentence. She wouldn't shut up about her damn cats. She sure had become more talkative since 10th grade, I thought. I marked down 10 on the paper. Such an awful problem with urine. He just started to lick it anywhere he found it. It was disgusting. Yeah, it is disgusting. At least he had a choice as to whether he wanted to lick urine or not, I thought bitterly. I remembered the Super Soaker suddenly, and the gas station, and that night of Pac-Man. I mark down 11. And all 5 I gave to Dina. Can you believe it? Couldn't take it anymore. My careful number choices were being pounded over by this idiot lady going on and on about her cats and how special they were. I wrote down 5 hastily on the paper, not even thinking, and I gave a polite goodbye, telling her I had to go to the general store. Turns out she really did love her damn cats. I spent a whole 15 minutes trying to get out of there. I was really polite. Yes, no, of course I remember those bus rides, of course. I think teal is a perfect color for Fluffy's little cat boots. When I finally managed to get away, I was mentally exhausted and decided to go back to the hotel and watch HBO. A couple of hours later, I turned on the news and stayed up unusually late to watch Letterman. I woke up in the morning feeling refreshed and amazing. Something about that last night had been cathartic, eye-opening. I was looking forward to the reunion that night, and as I dressed in the morning, I had this feeling of euphoria and elation that I hadn't felt in a long time, a very, very long time. Some days you just get that feeling, you know. For me, it was rare. I relished it, though, when it did happen. I was on cloud 9 all day. Even when I drove into the city to do some errands, I wasn't frustrated or upset at all, even though it took me a couple hours to get all that stuff done I needed to. I felt even better at the end of the day than I did when I woke up. I was a little sweaty from my errands, so I came back to the hotel to freshen up. The evening had begun to creep up as I jumped in the shower, and by the time I finished getting ready, dusk had fallen pleasantly on the city. I felt giddy, almost high. I hummed to myself as I ironed my shirt and combed my hair. I was very much expecting to enjoy that high school reunion. I even put a little extra special preparation into my regular routine, which made me a little late. I arrived at the reunion about 20 minutes after it started. I didn't chit-chat too much. I had a very specific plan in mind as to who I wanted to see and when. I had known for quite some time that I was going to make sure that tonight was a night that everyone would not soon forget. My first target was Rocky. I saw him at the table with the rest of the football guys from high school chatting and talking about all their old glories and victories. Like the day before, he looked up at me and smiled, waving. I pulled a little thing from my pocket, and I fired it from my arm. The football pin arched gracefully in a beautiful spiral before landing neatly into Rocky's outstretched hand. He caught it and noticed the cashier's check taped to it. I watched him open it, read the memo lucky number 12, and he looked up at me, open-mouthed. I winked and kept walking. I walked over to the bar where Robbie was standing. He didn't notice me, not at first. He was busy talking to some girl I hadn't seen since we graduated. "Hey," I said to the bartender softly, "can I get a sugar packet?" "Just a sugar packet?" he said, confused. "Yeah." He shrugged and handed me the sugar packet. I ripped it open, spilled its contents into the trash bin next to me. I took out another cashier's check from my pocket, folding it up very small and just barely fitting it into the now empty sugar packet. I tossed it at Robbie's head from a distance. He felt the impact on his head and brushed his hand through his hair, grabbing the packet. He pulled the check out and looked at it, gaping. It said, "You gave me some sugar in 6th grade. I'm just returning the favor." I didn't stop to see the rest of his reaction. I had to do this fast. I moved over to Stacy, sitting down next to her. I leaned over and palmed the check into her hand and whispered, "I hope you were wrong about the nipples." I'd hate for any poor cat to look like that on any side. Thanks for the 10th grade ride, and I hope Dina's 5 cats do okay.
She looked at me confused. As I walked away, I saw the same odd, paralyzed shock on her face as the last. One more to go. I walked up to Lonnie, the same way I did to Stacy, and I simply palmed him the check and whispered, "I broke everybody's high score in Pac-Man that night in 11th grade." There was already a buzz about me going on. I could hear it. I beelined for the door and made my exit. There was no reason for me to stay. Not anymore. I had reconnected, regrounded myself, and now it was time for me to leave. And if a few people were $1 million richer, well, like I said, they deserved it.